Back on Get Up with our top story of the day. A huge trade between the Knicks and the Nets. The first since 1983. Brooklyn is sending Mikal Bridges in exchange for 5 first-round picks beginning in next year's draft to reunite him with his Nova teammates Jalen Brunson, Josh Hart, and Dante DiVincenzo. So Knicks fans are buying into the Bridges hype, and so too is the betting market. At ESPN Bet, the Knicks went from 16-1 to win the title, and now they are 10-1 with only Boston having better odds to win it all among the teams from the East. When you look at the odds changing so quickly, Monica, are you also buying into this trade, making the Knicks the next team behind the Celtics to win the East?
At this moment, yes. I do think realistically you got to see what Philly does potentially in the course of this offseason. And I will leave room for how will Milwaukee respond after last season, right? But I think right now, what we just saw in the finals was you have to be able to defend the Celtics, but you also have to be able to keep up in terms of scoring with them. And I think the Dallas side of the operation will argue that their defense was solid, but they couldn't get their offense going. Okay, so let's unpack that a little bit more as hoopers. They had to put so much energy in terms of defending that they couldn't score versus a team that is such a stout defender versus the Celtics. To me, when you look at this, yes, immediately the athleticism, the length, and the defensive prowess jumps out. But then you think about the numbers when OG Anunoby was healthy on the floor, assuming he gets done with the Knicks. You think about the versatility of Mikal Bridges, the way that Dante DiVincenzo shot the ball, Steph Curry-like numbers this particular season, and Jalen Brunson being 5th in MVP voting. It would seem that you have a group that now has the opportunity to compete with the Celtics on both sides of the floor when you look at this. So yeah, right now I would definitely say it's the Knicks.
CJ, we just finished a decade where everybody in the West was building a team to beat the Golden State Warriors. It feels like the Knicks are doing the same for the Boston Celtics. How much did this close the gap between those two teams?
I think it definitely closed the gap a little bit more. You talk about the versatility, you talk about the wings, you talk about the depth that you need to go on a championship caliber run. You look at what the Boston Celtics did in acquiring Drew Holiday, obviously getting Kristaps Porzingis, Derek White, how integral those role players were throughout this season. Obviously, you need star power. You need the Jaylen Browns and the Jason Tatums of the world, but championships are won with role players executing and stealing you games down the stretch and stealing you games in the playoffs. And I think the Brooklyn Nets have built a super team of role players. They have depth, length, athleticism. Thibodeau's going to play them 35 to 45 minutes a game. And you have versatility with the ability to keep Julius Randle, allow him to move on, and to sign OG. So I like what they've done. I think they positioned themselves well in the Eastern Conference.
Bobby, was this the Knicks get over the top move?
I think so, and I think as we talked about, there's certainly work to be done. But I think you go back to that Eastern Conference Finals Game 7 without OG Anunoby, without Bojan Bogdanovic, without Julius Randle. I think if you had Mikal Bridges in that spot there, they're playing Boston in the conference finals here. So still work to be done. They still got to build out this depth. But when you can add a player who averaged 16 points a game for a player that finished the season injured in Bogdanovic, it certainly puts them over the top for right now.
Wendy, you think there's one more move the Knicks need to make?
They've got to close a deal with OG Anunoby. Let's go down I-95 a little bit here to Philadelphia. You're Philly. You have watched the Celtics win the title. You now have seen the Knicks make this move. You have $50 million in salary cap space. You need to worry about the Celtics. Don't even forget about the Bucks, but just think about the Northeast. If OG Anunoby gets to free agency, which would be Sunday, before he reaches a deal, he's a free agent now. He can negotiate with the Knicks. He can come to terms with the Knicks under the new rules before Sunday. If he gets to free agency on Sunday, you got to come in there and offer a huge deal to him to try to pull him out of New York. You need to go after him, and that is going to affect the way that the Knicks approach this. OG Anunoby is now an absolute must to have on that team, and they know that the 76ers are out there lurking with the potentially offer up to the max. OG is certainly aware of that. His agents are certainly aware of that. So for the Knicks, the next few days are about, can you get a deal done with OG Anunoby? Don't let him get on that free agent market. You get Anunoby locked down, and you come out in a game against anybody in this league, much less the Celtics, with Anunoby and Bridges on the wings and a top 5 MVP candidate in Brunson at the top of the key, you have got a great chance.
And how the Claw's injury history could play into it.
Kawhi Leonard is a superstar basketball player who is completely unreliable health-wise. He misses 46% of the games. He misses 60% of the playoffs since he has become a Clipper. And he does absolutely positively nothing to market the sport. Why should Paul George stay in that situation? Podcast P, wherever you are, Paul George, listen to me and listen to me good. You should want to leave if that's your teammate because you can't trust his availability. Period.
What's the latest you're hearing on Paul George?
The effect that Kawhi Leonard has had on Paul George is more his contract. Kawhi signed a 3-year deal. To this point, the Clippers have only been willing to offer Paul George about what they gave Kawhi Leonard, 3 years at a little bit less than the max contract. And Paul George, frankly, wants 4 years. He wants a full-out max. And there are a number of teams out there, I am told, that are prepared to give it to him, who are prepared to trade for him. One of those teams potentially is up the coast in Golden State. Golden State is big fish hunting. Remember, last trade deadline, they put a call in about LeBron James. They are sniffing around big deals. If Paul George is willing to leave, they would like to be an option for him. But any of these places that Paul would need to go via trade would have to get worked out with the Clippers and would have to get worked out by Saturday. The Clippers, I think, are in a position where they kind of want to call Paul's bluff that he would actually want to leave his hometown of LA. So that's one of the most interesting things to watch in terms of stare downs between now and this weekend.
Bobby, let's talk Paul George options and which teams might be in play.
Yeah, I mean, I think Wendy hit it right in the head. I think Golden State, for me, makes the most sense when we're looking not at a cap space team. And I think what decision Paul George does with that $48 million player option, if he opts in, that makes it more viable to go out and acquire him in a trade. I think for the Warriors, keep an eye on June 28th. That's the guarantee date for Chris Paul. He's got a $30 million guaranteed. If Chris Paul is waived and Klay Thompson is not brought back, that gives them all of the flexibility in the world with draft picks, with that Andrew Wiggins contract, with some of their young players to take that last big swing with Steph Curry still in his prime.
CJ, which team, put your executive hat on, which teams should bet the house on getting Paul George?
This is tough because I'm in the Western Conference, and people are going to say, why is he talking about where Paul George should go because he's in the NBA? But if I'm Paul George and I'm looking at this situation and I'm from LA, I look at trying to stay first because family matters and you want to be close to the family. You keep the family close. But if it's about spreading your wings and getting that extra year and getting your max and still having a chance to compete for a championship while being in California, the easy answer is the Golden State Warriors. You got Steph, who still can go bonkers for 50 in a game. You got Draymond Green, who sets great screens, can be your point forward. Steve Kerr likes to rest Steph a lot to start fourth quarters. They like to kind of be careful with his minutes as he gets closer to 40. So this is a situation that could be very interesting for Paul George in the event that the Warriors can't come to an agreement with Klay Thompson, in the event that the Warriors do want to do something with Wiggins and one of the young players or some of the young players. I think Paul George would be a seamless fit for the Golden State Warriors.
It seems like a lot of ifs when we talk about the Golden State Warriors, Monica. For you, what's the best spot for PG?
Honestly, I think you should stay where he is. And I hear where Stephen A. is coming from, but as we continue to look at championship teams, nothing happens in year one. If this was, I give you like 3 years ago with Steph, and the window was a little bit bigger, then maybe. If this was, even in Philly, year one is usually not when it happens. And so there's already been some progress made in the Los Angeles Clippers organization. Ty Lue is still a guy that we praise on in these conversations anytime we get a chance. I know the Kawhi thing is a big swing, whether or not he is or isn't available, but they've already started building. So it would have to be a really, really sweet offer in my mind for it to be better than what he's already started working on in the Clippers organization.
Wendy, when I hear CJ speak about PG to the Warriors, it makes me think about Klay Thompson. What have you heard about his deal going forward?
Yeah, so the Warriors have these big choices. They have an option pickup date on Chris Paul by the end of the week. They have potential negotiations for other big-name players. Will they be willing to put what's necessary in a deal to go after Paul George, for example? There's potentially other star players that they are also looking at. And Klay is sort of sitting there on the back burner. Whether or not, I don't know if he's going to be able to get a deal done before he hits unrestricted free agency come this weekend. What I think the Warriors are saying is they don't necessarily believe there's another option out there for Klay that he's willing to go to that would be a better fit for him. And they're a little bit, again, kind of like the Clippers are trying to maybe call Paul George's bluff that he would actually leave. I think the Warriors are in this position where is he going to get more money and more years than potentially we're going to offer him? And that probably is upsetting Klay. Klay, I think, looked at what happened with Andrew Wiggins, looked what happened with Draymond Green. They took less money in new contracts and were rewarded with 4-year-long deals. If you're Klay, you're looking at that saying, why not me? And if you're the Warriors, you're saying, well, Steph's under contract for 2 more years. Steve Kerr's under contract for 2 more years. That's kind of what we're offering you. So you can see where that impasse exists.
Bobby, how do you see this?
Yeah, listen, Klay Thompson's made $270 million in his career. I think you get a point in your career when money doesn't mean everything. It's quality of life, happiness. Will he go somewhere making maybe the non-tax mid-level exception, perhaps? So I think certainly how they've handled the Draymond Green negotiation, rewarding Andrew Wiggins, Jordan Poole, Klay Thompson saying, what about me? I'm still playing at a, not an all-star level, but certainly at a high level here. And right now that hasn't come to fruition.
I think this is tough. I think ultimately the Warriors are exploring, Klay is exploring. The relationship has shifted. I think oftentimes good things must come to an end, and it really just comes down to where they're at financially and where they're at with Klay's role. They experimented with him coming off the bench. They did a lot of things that I felt personally were a bit disrespectful for a Hall of Famer who's a top 75, one of the greatest shooters of all time, a guy who's won multiple championships, and if not getting hurt in that game, probably won another championship against the Toronto Raptors. I think he has to explore his options. As Bobby said before, he has to see what makes him feel safe and secure. Financially, he's secure. But now it's about role, it's about fit, and it's about proving not only to yourself, but to others that you can still play at a high level, which he's done throughout this last season.